Hello, welcome to another episode of The Next Step, the podcast, the video cast, if you will, in which I'm trying to help recruiters and employer branders embrace AI. Not by spending a whole pile of cash on a big expensive tool, but on using stuff that's off the shelf. Your ChatGPTs, your Geminis, your Claudes, what have you. This whole podcast is about helping you embrace what's next. Because let's be fair, AI is not just a fad, it's not a passing fancy, it is real. It's also daunting, it is scary, it is big. So we're going to try and find one problem every single week and see how we can solve it using AI. Remember, I don't get sponsored for any of this stuff, so when I say I'm using Claude or ChatGPT, it's because that's what I like to use, and nobody is paying me for this, so there you go. As a reminder, I would like your feedback. I would love a challenge, something that you are facing today, something you're struggling with, something where you're like, gosh, I have a sense that maybe AI could help, but I don't know exactly how. Please find me on LinkedIn, find me, leave a comment on YouTube, wherever it is. Let me know. If you get this by email subscription, just reply to the email. It comes directly to me. Send me your challenge. I want to hear it because I want to help you get a little closer to using AI in your day-to-day life because it's going to make your job not necessarily easier or easy, but certainly better, more effective, more useful, more valuable. So with that, let's start with today's challenge. Now, instead of going to a podcast and finding challenges that way, which by the way is harder than you'd think. It seems like if you Google best recruiting podcasts, they're all from Britain and they're all about people who run recruiting agencies and how to get more clients. And that's really not what we're here for today. I'm here for the in-house, even if you're an agency recruiter, but just the day-to-day action of how do you engage candidates? How do you get them to really understand your company, to understand how it's different, how it's interesting, to make it more choosable. I'm here for the employer branders and recruitment marketers who want to get people to understand their company's differentiated value, right? So there you go. So instead, I went to my clients. Yes, that's right. I have clients. I do actual work. This isn't my day job, if you can believe it. What? With the production value like this, you say? I know. What can I say? And I talked to a client. Actually, this is a coaching call, and we talked about the challenge as a recruiter of being a subject matter expert. Now, if you're a recruiter, you may know and feel on a deep emotional, spiritual level that you are in a rock in a hard place situation. Because you are. Because you have a certain kind of expertise. And that expertise is understanding the talent market, understanding how people look for jobs, understanding how to engage that market, how to get them excited, to get them to understand how to position your company to be an attractive company, right? But you don't have deep subject matter knowledge about the person you're trying to hire. So for example, you're trying to hire a nurse. You ever put a main line in? You ever drawn blood? No? Okay, so you don't really know what a nurse does all day. I mean, you have a sense because you're not an idiot, but you don't really feel it. Same way with a data scientist, same way with a salesperson, same way with whatever. The people you're trying to hire in most cases are kinds of subject matter experts, and you need to be talking to them and not sounding like yet another recruiter. There's plenty of those. You need to talk in their language so that they decide to engage with you instead of one of the other bajillion other recruiters who are sending the exact same stupid emails on LinkedIn and getting nowhere. So how do you do that? How do you level up your subject matter expertise, not just to know stuff, but to better engage your candidates? Well, there's a couple of different ways, but we're going to talk about one very specific one. Now, taking a step back, I'm a big believer, and I came up in a world where content marketing very much dominated how we thought about recruitment marketing and employer brand, right? We would tell stories, we would build content, we would build blogs, we build videos. We were telling these stories about people who worked at the company and why they worked at the company. And that's all well and good. The problem is, over the last 10 years or so, content marketing is so obvious and so prevalent in what we do every day. You almost don't even point it and call it content marketing. You're just like, oh no, we tell lots of stories and people show up. The problem is we're so over-optimized on telling lots of stories that we've forgotten how to tell good stories. We're forgotten to tell how to have useful stories. And that's really where the key here is, because your company is generating content. Now, I'm thinking back to my in-house days, and we would publish white papers, or we would announce patents on things that we built, or announce, there's all sorts of stuff you're doing. You could even tell a story. Maybe you're a product manager, or you're a nurse, or you would just collect a story. Maybe you just interview them, with a cell phone and kind of capture that information, turn it into an article, turn it into a blog, whatever. Those stories are super useful when you apply them the right way. Now, I'm assuming this isn't the process of building the story. This is the process of using the story or using the piece of content like the patent or the white paper, right? And white papers are a great example because have you read a white paper not in your area of expertise? It is hard. It is so hard. Those things are so just dense with information because it's not meant for you, right? If they're talking about how they are spinning a cork or how they coded a thing or how they use Docker to do a thing, you don't know what these things are. This is not your world. But to the person you're trying to talk to, this is useful stuff if you couch it right. So here, we're going to start with a white paper. Now, a white paper is going to be super dense, super specific, super informational, which is great, but you don't understand the information, which is bad. So what do? Well, here's what I would do. I would go into ChatGPT and I'm going to give it 3 pieces of content, right? The first, you may guess, is the white paper. And we'll just start there. We'll do this one at a time because in my experience, Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini will be able to do this very, very well. Doing this step by step is better than just dumping it all and saying, do all this for me. For whatever reason, if you parcel it out step by step, you get better results, okay? So the first thing you're going to do is upload the white paper and say, I am not a subject matter expert in this subject. Excuse me. Please identify 10 vital talking points that an expert would need to know from this white paper. And you can word it any way you want, but this is the idea. You want to say, look, you're talking to someone who doesn't know, but help me understand what someone who does know would get out of this. And the LLM is going to rattle off a bunch of ideas of, hey, these are the talking points, or these are interesting points, or things that, were talked about in the paper. You can specify, please do not hallucinate. You can even specify, tell me what page each idea was on, so you can kind of identify, oh, okay, good. So it's not making stuff up, because that would be bad here. Once it's generated that list, a couple of things are happening. One, you've forced it to read that piece of content and evaluate it in a certain kind of lens. You're saying, hey, understand it as an expert, but then distill that expertise to someone who isn't an expert. Next, go over to a target person, someone who your hiring manager would love to hire. And this shouldn't be too hard to find. In fact, if you do it in the intake, you can say, hey, is there anybody who in a perfect world with a magic wand you would love to hire? Who would that be? Get that information. Go to their LinkedIn and go, it's more, and then download PDF. And what it does is it downloads the PDF of that profile. And that includes names and titles and experience and where they worked. And for lots of people who put in a lot of content about what they did at each job, which is a lot of people, not everybody, but you can get a pretty good download of what this expert has done and how they talk about what they've done, which is super useful. If you find a profile where there's not a lot of content, you got to find a different one, because this is useful stuff. This is really important we do this. So download that PDF and then upload that PDF back to your LLM and say, hey, can you explain to this person why this white paper is vital to read? Explain and focus in a short email what they would learn in this white paper and why they should read it. Boom. And that's what it is. So now LLM's evaluating the white paper and trying to connect it to what it sees from that profile. It's no longer talking to you. It's talking to that profile. And it's going to read that profile and say, oh, okay, well, they've had these kind of job titles and it has this kind of education. It's built these kinds of things. I can make some assumptions about what they care about, and I can make some assumptions about what they would find interesting in this white paper. Great. That's step 2. Step 3. Do me a favor and write. Actually, I don't know why I say do me a favor. Sometimes I actually tell my LM, do me a favor. Hey, I don't always talk to. I generally type to it, but I get real friendly. What is up with that? I don't know. I'm trying to save myself from the robot apocalypse. Well, fingers crossed. Anyway, you will say, okay, based on all that, write an email that I, as a non-expert, can send to an expert with this kind of experience about why reading this white paper is helpful for them, either from a professional development standpoint or from a career standpoint. Submit. Boom. You now have an email that doesn't sound like it was written by an expert, because you don't want to portray yourself as an expert when you're not, because that's how you get caught out and you look like an idiot, and you don't want that. You want to be the person who thought enough and thought through it and, is pretty smart. You got some stuff going together. It's not just all goldfish in your head like it is for me. You've actually have read this potentially, and you're trying to say, hey, I'm not in your world, but you might find this sort of thing interesting. Now, why did I bring up content marketing earlier? Because in a content marketing world, you would just take the white paper and send it to someone and say, hey, thought you might find this interesting. And that might be the entirety of the message. The problem is everybody can do that. You know why? Because it was so stupid easy to do. You just have to write, hey, thought you might find this interesting, and boom, there you go. And I'm going to tell you right now, subject matter experts get stuff like that on a semi-regular basis. And much like, hey, do you want to talk about a job? What you think of as giving information is actually saying demanding attention. And that is not the same. And people aren't nearly as willing to give attention rather than receive useful information. So what we're trying to do is take this white paper and say, hey, this is why you should read this because it's useful for these things. And now you're not asking for attention so much as you're saying, hey, if you give me attention for this, this is what the value of that attention will be. Suddenly, you're having a real conversation in a one-way dialogue, but you're having this transaction of if you pay attention to these ideas, you will learn the following things, and this is how it's useful to you. That is a very different kind of messaging than, hey, thought you might find this interesting, bang, there you go, right? You might consider taking it one step farther and uploading a sample of your writing. Where does a sample of your writing come from? Well, if you've written blogs or you podcasted and you've written a couple of books, such as this moi, it's easy. If you haven't, no, don't worry about it. You write a lot. And so a lot of LLMs, I'm thinking Claude specifically, I haven't tested it on Gemini, but actually I know Gemini can do it because it's a Google product. It can look at your Gmail and it can see all the emails you've written and kind of get a sense of how you write things. And you can say, based on how I write, make this email sound more like me. And it will give you examples. You can even kind of, from there, give it tweaks. You can say, yeah, that's a little informal for me and for this conversation. Can you make this sound slightly more professional? Boom, send. It will tweak. And then honestly, yes, you can copy and paste, but really you should be copying and tweaking and then paste it and then tweaking before you send it. Make sure it sounds like a human wrote it, because make sure it sounds like you wrote it, even though you're not a subject matter expertise. In this way, we're leveraging the LLM to help you build more relationships with subject matter experts that you and your, more importantly, hire manager care to engage. Now, the nice thing about this process is once you've collected that white paper and once you've collected your sample of how you write, great. Now this process gets fast. You can do 10 different people in about 20 minutes. So if you can target 10 different people, and by the way, I know you know how to target people because you target people like me all the time. Anyway, you already know how to target people. So just build a list of 10 people and that begins your pipeline. And you just say, okay, based on this profile, how would you rewrite the email about that same white paper? And I think it will be interesting as you do it, you will see differences in how it's writing it and the things it's suggesting are interesting. Other things to consider while you're doing this. What happens when you ask it for a long email versus what happens when you ask it for a short email? Give me one good talking point about why someone should read this. Give me 3 talking points about why this white paper would be useful for someone's professional development or career. Play around with it. This is the thing about LLMs. They're very interactional. You want to engage with it. You want to go back and forth. That's how you get good stuff. That said, as a note, I have noticed that as you engage in a single conversation, so let's say you're in ChatGPT and you're having this back and forth, in the beginning, the answers it's giving you are broad, they're big, they're creative, and as you do it, the aperture narrows and it starts to focus and you see more of the same stuff over and over again. Don't be scared to say new chat and start from scratch. And that's something you should do every couple of conversations just to kind of clear things up. Otherwise, it's going to remember stuff at the beginning and how it interprets that, and it's less and less creative as it goes. So just keep that in mind. As a final tip, what I would do is at the end of that email, I might add, was there anything you saw in this white paper that you found interesting? Just something to give them an excuse to come back to. And even if you are so far out of your wheelhouse, you might even couch it in terms of like, hey, I'm not the expert you are. Can you help me understand how or why you found this kind of material interesting? I made some some inferences. I made some suppositions here about what you might find interesting, but I'd love to get your reaction to what was actually interesting about that. This begins the conversation. And even if they come back with gobbledygooks, technobabble you don't understand, guess what? You got your old friend LLM to help you translate that into terms that you understand. So leverage your LLM. Again, it's free or $20 a month to get great tools like this to develop strong pipelines with people who are used to getting hassled by, hey, I saw your profile and thought it was interesting. Would you like to talk about this job kind of, outreach, and turn it into, hey, thought you might find this interesting and this is why. And that's really where the power is. All right. Hopefully you found this useful. Again, if you have a challenge or an idea or a situation that you would love to see how AI could be useful, tell me. You got to tell me. If you got this via email, just reply to the email. If you got it on YouTube, go comment in the YouTube. I keep an eye on those things too. Or just find me on LinkedIn and ping me. Remember, if you're looking for, I'm doing a lot of research lately, like a lot of research. I've got a very long research report about biotechs, a very long research report about biotech and pharma, and a very long report about SaaS, US-based mid-sized SaaS companies like Brex and Plaid and stuff like that. What they're doing to recruit and how they're talking and what their challenges are. I've got another one coming out shortly where it's a super big deep dive on 50 of the most disruptive companies, which I think you're going to want to see. So be sure to check out choosable.work. It's where I keep all my downloads and ebooks and classes and stuff like that. So go check out choosable.work and you can download that research. It is 100% free. You will probably get something out of it, even if you just skim. And frankly, if you just download it and throw it in your LLM and say, what would be useful about this report for me? I guarantee you will find some useful stuff. So with that, thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to tell a friend about people who need, recruiters and employer branders who need to get involved in AI and get them to help take the next step. See you later.